The interview Stella Rivers stood outside the gleaming tower of Cross Technologies. Her portfolio clutched against her chest like armor. The Seattle rain had soaked through her jacket, and she could feel her carefully styled hair beginning to frizz. At 26, she had thought she had it all figured out. Her own interior design firm.
Yes.
A growing client list, and dreams that seemed within reach. That was before the economy crashed, taking her business and her confidence with it. Months. That's how long it had been since Rivers Design had closed its doors. 3 months of rejected applications, dwindling savings, and sleepless nights wondering where she had gone wrong. This job interview at Cross Technologies was her last real shot at getting back on her feet, and she knew it. The receptionist barely glanced up as Stella approached the marble desk. "Stella Rivers for Mr. Cross," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "40th floor? Elevator bank to your right. He's expecting you." Elevator ride felt endless. Stella checked her reflection in the polished doors, smoothing down her black blazer and trying to project confidence she didn't feel. She had researched. Damian Cross, extensively tech billionaire, self-made at 32, known for his demanding standards and brilliant mind. What she hadn't expected was how devastatingly handsome he would be in person. Damian Cross sat behind a massive glass desk in an office that screamed success. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline. Stella's attention was immediately captured by the man himself. Dark hair perfectly styled, piercing blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her. A jawline that could have been carved from stone. He wore his expensive suit like it was made for him, which it probably was. "Miss Rivers," he said, standing to greet her. His voice was deep, commanding, and sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Thank you for coming." Stella stepped forward, hoping her legs wouldn't betray her nervousness. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Cross. I know your time is valuable." He gestured to the chair across from his desk, and she sat down, placing her portfolio carefully on her lap. Damian resumed his seat, his eyes never leaving her face. There was something intense about his gaze, as if he were studying her, trying to figure out what made her tick. "Your portfolio is impressive," he began, flipping through printed copies of her work. "But I have to ask, why is someone with your talent looking for work? What happened to Rivers Design?" The question hit like a punch to the gut, but Stella had prepared for it. The economic downturn hit small businesses hard. "My clients couldn't afford luxury renovations anymore, and I couldn't sustain the overhead. Sometimes talent isn't enough if the timing is wrong." Damian nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "And you think redesigning my penthouse office will be different?" "I think you're not the type of man who lets economic uncertainty dictate his decisions," Stella replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "You see value in creating spaces that inspire productivity and success. That's exactly what I specialize in." For the first time since she'd entered the room, Damian smiled. It was a small smile, barely a curve of his lips, but it transformed his entire face. "Interesting answer. Tell me, what would you do with this space?" Stella looked around the office, her designer's eye automatically cataloging everything she saw. The space was impressive but cold, all sharp angles and sterile surfaces. It looked like a boardroom rather than a place where creativity could flourish. "The proposal, it's beautiful," she said carefully, "but it doesn't reflect who you are. It's what people expect a CEO's office to look like, not what it should look like for you specifically." Damian leaned back in his chair, clearly intrigued. "Go on. You built this company from nothing. You're innovative, willing to take risks, but this office plays it safe. It could belong to any corporate executive." Stella stood up, walking toward the windows. "You have this incredible view, but you're not maximizing it. The lighting is too harsh, the color palette too cold. Someone coming in here for a meeting would feel intimidated rather than inspired to collaborate." She turned back to face him, her passion for her work overriding her nervousness. "I would create a space that feels powerful but approachable. Textures, warmer lighting, strategic use of color to evoke trust and creativity. A space that makes people want to work with you, not just for you." Damian had been watching her intently as she spoke, and now he stood up, moving around the desk, to stand closer to her. Too close. Stella could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her pulse quicken.
How long would this
Transformation take, he asked, his voice lower now. 6 weeks, maybe 8, depending on custom pieces and shipping times. Stella tried to focus on the professional aspects of their conversation, but his proximity was making it difficult to think clearly. That's a long time to be working closely together, Damien observed, and there was something in his tone that made Stella's breath catch. I work very professionally with all my clients, she managed, though her voice sounded breathless, even to her own ears. I'm sure you do. His blue eyes were studying her face again, and Stella felt like he could see every thought she was trying to hide. But I have a feeling this project might be different. Before Stella could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. Damien glanced at it and sighed. I need to take this. Why don't you take a look around, get a feel for the space? Can continue our discussion in a few minutes. He moved back to his desk to answer the call, leaving Stella standing by the windows with her heart racing. She tried to focus on examining the office with a professional eye, taking mental notes about measurements and architectural details, but she couldn't stop stealing glances at Damien as he talked on the phone. He commanded attention even during a simple phone conversation. His voice was authoritative but not harsh, confident without being arrogant. She watched the way his hands moved as he spoke, imagining those same hands touching her skin, and immediately pushed the thought away. This was a job interview, nothing more. But when he hung up the phone and looked at her again, the heat in his gaze suggested he might be thinking along similar lines. Sorry about that, he said, walking back toward her. Where were we? We're about to tell me whether or not I got the job, Stella said, trying to regain her professional composure. Damien stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. The job is yours if you want it. But I should warn you, I'm very hands-on with projects that matter to me. We'll be spending a lot of time together over the next 2 months. There was definitely a double meaning in his words, and Stella felt her cheeks flush. I can handle working closely with clients. It's part of the job. Good, he said, extending his hand to shake on their agreement. When Stella placed her hand in his, he held it just a moment longer than necessary, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. The simple touch sent electricity shooting up her arm. Welcome to Cross Technologies, Stella, he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a caress. I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting project. The attraction as Stella gathered her portfolio and prepared to leave. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something much more complicated than a simple design job. The way Damien looked at her, the electricity she felt when he touched her hand, the butterflies dancing in her stomach, every time he smiled, all of it pointed to dangerous territory. She needed this job desperately. Her savings were almost gone, and her rent was due in 2 weeks. She couldn't afford to complicate things with her client, no matter how attractive he was or how he made her feel. But as she rode the elevator, down 40 floors, Stella couldn't stop thinking about the heat in Damien's blue eyes, or the way her body had responded to his nearness. She had a sinking feeling that keeping things professional was going to be much harder than she had anticipated. The rain had stopped by the time she reached the street. For the first time in months, Stella felt a spark of hope. She had a job, a chance to rebuild her career, and maybe, just maybe, something else entirely. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, it made her smile. 2 months working closely with Damien Cross. What could possibly go wrong? 3 days into the project, Stella had already transformed Damien's sterile office into something warmer and more inviting. Fabric samples and paint swatches covered every surface, and she found herself working late into the evening, completely absorbed in bringing her vision to life. What she hadn't expected was how often Damien would find reasons to check on her. Progress. You're here late again. His voice came from behind her as she knelt on the floor, arranging color samples under different lighting conditions. Stella looked up to find Damien standing in the doorway, his suit jacket gone, and his sleeves rolled up. The sight of his forearms made her mouth go dry, and she quickly looked back down at her samples. The lighting changes throughout the day. I need to see how these colors will look at different times, she explained, trying to keep her voice steady. Damien moved closer, kneeling down beside her on the expensive carpet. "Me what you're thinking," his shoulder brushed against Hers as he leaned in to examine her work, and Stella felt that familiar electric current run through her body. She picked up a deep navy fabric sample, her fingers trembling slightly. This would be perfect for the accent wall behind your desk. It's sophisticated, but not overwhelming, and it will make the natural light from the windows really pop. She held up the sample, accidentally brushing his fingers as he reached for it. "I like it," he said, but his eyes weren't on the fabric. They were fixed on her face, studying her features in the soft evening light filtering through the windows. Stella swallowed hard, very aware of how close they were sitting. "The furniture arrives tomorrow. Once we get the new pieces in place, you'll really be able to see the vision coming together, Stella," Damien said quietly, setting the fabric sample aside. "Can I ask you something personal?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "You seeing anyone?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Stella knew she should deflect, keep things professional, but something about the vulnerability in his eyes made her answer honestly. "No," she whispered. "I haven't had time for dating. Building a business, then losing it, then trying to rebuild my life, it doesn't leave much room for relationships." Damien reached out, his fingers gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Good," he said simply, and then his lips were on hers. The complications, the kiss, was everything Stella had imagined, and more. Damien's lips were soft but demanding, his hands threading through her hair as he pulled her closer. For a moment, she forgot about professional boundaries, about the risk she was taking with her career. All she could focus on was the way he made her feel, wanted, desired, alive. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Damien rested his forehead against hers, his blue eyes searching her face. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you walked into my office," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. Stella's heart hammered against her ribs. "Damien, we can't. I work for you. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen." "Why?" he asked, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "Because you're worried about what people will think? Because you're afraid it will complicate things?" "Because I can't afford to lose this job," Stella said, forcing herself to pull away from his touch. "My career is just starting to recover. If this goes wrong, if things become awkward between us, I'm back to square one." Damien stood up, running his hands through his hair. "So you're just going to pretend this doesn't exist? That there's not something incredible happening between us?" "I'm going to finish this project and do the best job I can," Stella said, gathering her samples with shaking hands. "That's what you're paying me for, Stella, please." There was something vulnerable in his voice that made her stop. "Never felt this way about anyone. I'm not asking you to risk your career. I'm asking you to give us a chance." She looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "What if it doesn't work out? If we try this and it falls apart? Can't just walk away from a project of this magnitude?" "Then we're professional about it," Damien said, stepping closer. "We're both adults. We can handle this maturely." Against her better judgment, Stella found herself nodding. "Okay, but we keep this quiet until the project is finished. I won't be the subject of office gossip." Damien smiled, the tension leaving his shoulders. "Deal." The next few weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and secret glances. They maintained perfect professionalism during the day, but after hours, when the office was empty, they would find themselves drawn to each other, like magnets. Damien would bring her dinner while she worked late. They would talk about everything and nothing while sitting on the floor of his office, surrounded by fabric samples and paint chips. The transformation of his office was remarkable. This sterile corporate space had become warm and inviting, with rich textures and carefully chosen colors that reflected both power and approachability. But more than that, Stella was transforming Damien himself. She watched him become more relaxed, more open, more willing to let his guard down. "You've changed my entire perspective," he told her one evening as they stood looking out at the city lights. "Not just about the office, but about everything. I've been so focused on building this company that I forgot what it felt like to actually enjoy life." "You've changed mine too," Stella admitted, leaning back against his chest as his arms wrapped around her. "Forgot what it felt like to be passionate about something again. Both my work and ... And," he prompted, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. And this us, whatever this is. I know what I want this to be, Damien said, turning her in his arms. I want you to be more than just the woman who redesigned my office. I want you to be the woman who redesigned my life. Stella's heart swelled at his words, but before she could respond, they were interrupted by the sound of the elevator doors opening. They sprang apart just as one of Damien's executives walked in, briefcase in hand. Mr. Cross, I was hoping to catch you before you left. We need to discuss the Morrison account. Damien's expression immediately shifted back to professional mode. Of course, Stella, I think we're done here for the evening, she nodded, gathering her things quickly. I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Cross.
Aye.
As she walked to the elevator, Stella couldn't shake the feeling that their secret was becoming harder to keep, and with only 1 week left on the project, she was starting to worry about what would happen when it was over. The resolution, the final week of the project, arrived faster than Stella had expected. The office was nearly complete, transformed into a space that perfectly balanced professionalism with warmth. Rich navy accent walls complemented the natural, light, carefully chosen artwork, added personality without being distracting. And comfortable seating areas encouraged collaboration while maintaining the authority befitting a CEO. But as proud as Stella was of her work, she couldn't stop thinking about what would happen when the project ended. She and Damien had grown closer over the past month, stealing moments together whenever they could, but they had carefully avoided discussing the future. It's perfect, Damien said, standing in the doorway on Friday evening, surveying the completed office. It's exactly what I envisioned, but couldn't put into words. Stella looked around at her work, feeling a mixture of pride and melancholy. The final touches will be installed Monday morning.
After that.
You'll be all set. And after that? Damien asked, moving closer to her. What happens to us? The question she'd been dreading. Stella took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice steady. I suppose we go back to our regular lives. You run your company. I look for new clients. Is that what you want? His blue eyes searched her face intently. What I want doesn't matter, Stella said, looking down at her hands. This was always temporary. We both knew that. Damien was quiet for a long moment, then walked over to his desk and picked up a folder. I have something for you. He handed her the folder, and Stella opened it to find a check that made her gasp. It was for twice the amount they had agreed upon. Damien, this is too much. We had a contract. The contract was for redesigning my office, he said. This is for everything else. For showing me what I was missing, for making me remember what it feels like to be happy. Stella's eyes filled with tears. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. And there's something else. He pulled out another document. I've been thinking about what you said that first day about timing. Your business failed because of bad timing, not because of lack of talent. I want to help you start over. Stella looked at the document in shock. It was a contract for Cross Technologies to retain Rivers Design as their exclusive interior design consultant for all future projects. This is a 3-year contract, she breathed. Damien, this is worth more than my entire previous business. I know, he said simply. I want to invest in you, Stella. Not just professionally, but personally. I want to be part of your future if you'll have me. The tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. Are you sure? People will talk? They'll say you're giving me special treatment because we're involved? Let them talk, Damien said, pulling her into his arms. I don't care what anyone thinks. I care about you. Stella in love with you, Stella, and I don't want to hide it anymore. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. But I want to earn this contract. I want to prove that I deserve it. You already have, Damien said against her lips. You've proven it every day for the past 2 months. You're talented, dedicated, and you see things other people miss. That's why I want to work with you. Everything else is just a bonus. 6 months later, Stella stood in the lobby of Cross Technologies, watching as employees streamed through the modern, welcoming space she had redesigned. The company's productivity had increased by 15% since the renovation, and Damien had commissioned her to redesign the entire building. Admiring your work? Damien asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. Just thinking about how different things are now, Stella said, accepting the cup gratefully. 6 months ago, I was unemployed and desperate. Now I have more clients than I can handle thanks to you. Thanks to your talent, Damien corrected. I just gave you the opportunity to show it. Stella smiled, looking down at the engagement ring that had appeared on her finger just last week. Damien had proposed in his office, the same place where they had first met. Surrounded by the warm, inviting space she had created. I still can't believe you asked me to marry you in your office, she said, laughing. It seemed appropriate, Damien said, pulling her close. That's where my life really began. The day you walked in with your portfolio and your determination and changed everything. I came to impress you, Stella said, echoing the words that had become something of a joke between them. I never expected to fall in love. Best business decision I ever made, Damien said, kissing her temple. Hiring you for that project. Though I have to admit, I was more interested in you than the office redesign from the very beginning. Shh, you hit it well, Stella teased. Not well enough, apparently. My assistant figured it out within the first week. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their employees work in the space Stella had designed. She had not only rebuilt her career, but had found something. She hadn't even known she was looking for a partner who challenged her, supported her dreams, and loved her for exactly who she was. Ready to go home? Damien asked, checking his watch. Ready, Stella said. But as they walked toward the elevator, she turned back for one last look at the lobby. It was beautiful, functional, and welcoming. Everything she had hoped to achieve. But more than that, it represented a new beginning, a second chance at both love and success. The elevator doors closed behind them, and Stella smiled, thinking about the future they were building together. She had come to Cross Technologies looking for a job, but she had found so much more. She had found her home. The end.